sit down.
ערב טוב לכולם, ברוכים הבאים לבית ראשונים, המוזיאון של ציונה. יש לנו זכות גדולה לארח כאן את המורה קלסנג במסגרת הביקור שלה בארץ, הביקור השנתי שלה דרך ידידי, הדהרמה. המורה קלסנג נולדה בגרמניה. היא הספיקה אחרי הלימודים, אחרי התיכון עוד להגיע לארץ, להתמודד באלומות ולעבוד בתל אביב. משם היא יצאה לטיול במזרח בכל מיני מדינות, עד שהיא נתפסה בכל הנושא של הלימודים הבודהיסטיים. היא לקחה על עצמה נדרי נזירות, ומשם היא החליטה להיכנס לתהליך של לימודים של 16 שנה לתואר גשת, לימודים של פילוסופיה בודהיסטית בדרמסלה, במכון לדיאלקטיקה בודהיסטית. בשנת 2009 היא השלימה את הלימודים לתואר גשת. תואר גשת זה תואר שהוא בעצם תואר של מלימוד טיבטי. היא האישה הראשונה בעולם שקיבלה את התואר הזה. וכעבור שנתיים היא קיבלה תואר נוסף, גשרים. יש איזה גשר שהוא גם שולט בשאר הכיתות הבודהיסטיות, לא רק בגילוקפה. אני חושבת מלומדת מאוד גדולה. כל שנה היא מבקרת אותנו, וכל שנה היא מבקרת את התלמידים של הקמה, של קורס מדריכי מדיטציה. היא מצליחה להעביר חומרים מאוד מורכבים ומסובכים בצורה מאוד ברורה. מהווה גשר נפלא בין המזרח למערב, ואין לכם מושג איזה זכות יש לכם היום. אני פגשתי את המורה בדצמבר 2010, פעם ראשונה שהגיעה לארץ. נסעתי אותה מתל אביב לטובה, לקיבוץ, בדיוק שהיו שרפות על הכרמל. ראינו מצד שמאל ביחד את השרפות על כביש 6, והגענו לריטריט בטובה. פעם ראשונה שנפגשנו, ובאמת הבנתי את הגדולה של המורה הזאת. אנחנו נדבר בשעתיים הקרובות, המורה תדבר על מהאמודרה, מדיטציית החותם הגדול. אני יודע שחלקכם מתחילים, חלקכם מתקדמים. המורה יודעת את זה, היא תתחיל עם נושאים בסיסיים, והיא תכוון לכך שגם יש פה מתחילים. אז תרענו, ההרצאה היא שעתיים, מי שלוחץ לא לוחץ לשירותים פה, אבל בואו ננסה בשעתיים האלה, לא יותר מדי שתתנו. Thank you. בסוף ההרצאה יש קופסה דנה, כתבתי לכם, דנה זה מדיבות הלב, תוכלו לתת כמה שאתם רוצים, מוכנים כנדיבות הלב לתמוך בביקור של המורה, אז זה בביקורים הבאים, אני אדבר על זה גם בסוף.
Well, shalom. Nice to meet you, nice to be here. And I thought to start with a meditation. So before I teach you how to meditate, you have to do it. Pretty sure you all know how to meditate. So
let's do a few moments of breathing meditation.
Just watching the breath going in and out, the way
Used to it, probably used to it. Just to
let
go.
Okay.
Oh, no, try.
No? Oh.
Yeah, it was not on.
It's not on. So just to let go of whatever worries or whatever disruptive thoughts you have from throughout the day, from before. Just that you focus on what we're going to talk about here. And then I'll say a few words about setting your motivation, just that you're in the right frame of mind, and then I'll start the lesson. So just make sure you're relaxed, your back is straight. You can put your hands wherever it feels comfortable. Okay. Just gently put your attention on the breathing. to set your motivation. Think that may you're being here and you're listening to an explanation on Mahamudra. Become a cause for getting yourself in your mind, getting to know your mind and yourself better. So that you're able to make changes, positive changes to your mind. And in that way, make positive changes to your life. Bringing more satisfaction and inner peace to yourself and also to other living beings. So that indirectly you can be of benefit to limitless sentient beings. Some of you may have already heard of the topic. It's actually really difficult, but less difficult to explain it than to do it. So my job is a little easier in the sense that if you want to do it, that's so much harder. And how much time do I have?
2 hours.
2 hours. What time is it now?
7:50.
7:50? 7:50? 7:15? Great. Just give me a hint if I'm close to. Alright, so of course we don't have that much time and I can't go into that many details, but I'll try my best to cover everything that is most important to know about this topic. Actually, Mahamudra is a very advanced Buddhist meditation practice, or Buddhist meditation technique. Your battery's not going to run out?
No.
No, good. Okay, so it's a very advanced meditation technique, but like any technique, there are easier levels that are appropriate for someone starting off on this meditation, and there are harder levels, more advanced levels. In fact, you may have heard that Buddhism, in particular the traditional Buddhism that is prevalent in Tibet, which is called, well, Tibetan Buddhism, there you have teachings that are called sutric teachings, and then there are teachings that are called tantric teachings. Just don't Google Tantra, that's not Tantra. It's not the Tantra that comes up when you Google it, it's quite different. But anyway, Tantra basically describes very sophisticated meditational techniques, and the goal of which is enlightenment, or to use another word, spiritual awakening. And just very powerful techniques, very effective. And so Mahamudra spans, it has a sutric aspect, which is the non-tantric aspect of Buddhism, and then there's also the tantric aspect of Buddhism. And so Mahamudra kind of includes that too. If we have enough time, I say a little bit about it, but it's not difficult to explain this tantric aspect. But of course, I would start off with the sutric aspect, because that's the foundation for everything else. So, saying it's a technique, a meditation technique, what is the object? What do you meditate on? Of course, you are probably all familiar with the fact that when you meditate on something. So there's always an object. So in this case, the object is mainly your own mind. What kind of mind? We all have different types of minds. We have 5 sense consciousnesses, and we have what's called the mental consciousness. Well, it could be the 5 mental, it could be one of the 5 sense consciousnesses, eye consciousness, etc., and the mental consciousness. But the mental consciousness is the main object you focus on, your own mental consciousness. Now, already from saying that, it may become clear that this is a very difficult meditation because we're not really familiar with the object of meditation, which is our own mind. Okay? In fact, we may, until very recently, or maybe even up to now, not believe that there is something different from the brain that is called mind. It's a different entity. So from a Buddhist point of view, mind and brain are different things. Not independently different. I mean, you couldn't have a human mind without a human brain. No question about that. Of course, you need a human brain to have this unique human mind. However, they are not identical. If 2 things depend on each other, it doesn't mean that they are the same. Okay? So you can have 2 sticks leaning against each other, one depending on the other for its position, but that doesn't mean that they're the same. Okay? Doesn't mean they're the same. So with 2 sticks leaning against each other, yeah, for them to remain in their position, they need each other, but that doesn't mean they're not individual sticks. So that is an example that is sometimes given to explain that mind and brain are very much dependent on one another, but they're not the same. Simply because the brain is physical and the mind is that which is non-physical. It's the entity, it's called mind. Mind is anything that is non-physical and that experiences things. You know, you experience something right now. You see things, you hear things, you feel the chair you're sitting on, you smell something, right? Okay. Taste possibly something, maybe a chewing gum that you just started, still kind of tasty. And so then of course there's the mental consciousness that's constantly chatting, never shuts up, especially when you want to meditate. Keeps talking and planning ahead and thinking of yesterday, etc. So, therefore, this entity, this experiencing entity, that's the mind. And we're not aware of it simply because we're so busy with the objects of the mind. Nice sights, nice shapes, nice sounds, colors, you know, all day long. We're very much occupied with the objects, not with the mind itself. Our mind is, maybe you could compare it to a movie generator. You know, just the light of the generator, okay? We don't pay attention to that because we pay attention to the movie that's happening up on the wall. Actually, where does the film run? It's with the projector. But it seems to the person watching, like the old projectors, you know, old movie projectors, when the film runs one of those projectors, it's right here, but it's projected over there, giving us the impression that everything is happening over there. So our attention is over there, not with the movie projector. Similarly, our mind has things appear to it, it always has objects happening, and it seems they're happening over there. Our mind is over here. We don't really pay attention to that which experiences, but we pay attention to the movie over there, as if it was objectively out there. That's the first difficulty, well, it's the second difficulty in terms of focusing on the mental consciousness. First of all, recognizing it's not the brain. Okay, if I wanted to meditate on the brain, I'd probably get a brain surgeon and kind of make a little hole and kind of watch it. That's the best way to observe your brain, to actually look at it, right? But the mind is invisible, cannot be seen, cannot be heard. It's a non-physical object, as there are many non-physical objects. And so to become aware of that takes a little longer. And it's a difficulty we experience just because we're not used to looking. It's as simple as that. Meditation, which the Tibetan word for meditation is gom, which means to familiarize, to habituate yourself with something. So it's all about getting used to it. Now, once you have some sense of what the mind is about, and usually we study about it first, have some theoretical idea, before we start looking for it. But another difficulty, distinguishing the mind from the physical basis, the brain, is to understand the object and the mind are not as separate as it may seem. Actually, from a Buddhist point of view, although it seems we're seeing what's going on around us, that's just like an optical illusion. And modern science helps us to understand that, because by now we know that colors are light waves. Blue and yellow and red, all the colors we perceive, it seems they're out there. Seem to be over there. But science has shown us, and the Buddha talked about it 2,600 years ago, they're not out there. We believe they're out there, separate from our mind, because that's the way it appears. But that's not the way these objects exist. And there are a lot of things that appear one way, exist a different way. I mean, we say the sun rises every morning. Of course the sun doesn't rise, the sun doesn't even move. The earth, is moving around, and we still use these words. Oh, the sun is rising. What a beautiful sunrise, sunset. No sun moving at all. It's an optical illusion. And lots of them. Sunset and sunrise is just an example. So likewise, it seems, or a movie projector, it seems like all the action is happening over there, when in actuality, with the movie projector, it's all happening with the projector. So objects are just like that. Blue, we see blue because of some physical, whatever entity, light waves, and then we have the unique experience of blue, green, etc. And we may even assume we all see the same thing. But how do I know that your blue is not my green? And we both call it blue, or green for that matter. I mean, there are examples. Just recently there was like a dress on the BBC. Just Google BBC dress, I don't need to say more. Where people saw the same dress, two groups of people saw the different colors. Okay, so it's got to do with our brain, it's got to do with our eyes. Just Google BBC dress, I don't need to explain it. Okay, so therefore, the objects seem to be out there, independent of our mind. But if that were true, we somehow know that's not true, because we have sayings such as, beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. Do you have that in Hebrew, an equivalent to that? Right? Okay. So we have sayings like that, but it's kind of like, nah. Yeah, but that person's so weird. They listen to that kind of music. There's something wrong with them. That's just horrible. Right? Like when we hear, oh, someone of these listens to a lot of hard rock or something, or like metal, heavy metal, and they calm down when they listen to that. And we go, what? How weird they are. Actually, it's subjectively to that person. That's what it's beneficial, or that's what they like. But we can't help but think they're so weird. It's so weird they're dressed like that. It's so weird they like this and they don't like that. So there's a sense, there's beauty and goodness and badness from the side of the object. But actually, that's one of the main important aspects of Buddhism, that everything comes from the mind. It's totally subjective. Even good and bad. Good and bad? Is there an absolute good or bad? No. There's nothing absolutely existing, which basically means it seems that there's beauty over there, there's blue over there, there's goodness, there's badness. But if we really reflect upon, Is there goodness objectively there? No. As a relative goodness. In relation to something, we call something good. In relation to something else, we call it bad. One of my favorite examples, I can't help it, is Bibi. Oh. Good old Bibi. Right? 50% of this country think some of this, like the stuff that Bibi does, I mean his policies, they're good. Must be around 50, right? Okay? Probably next time again, 50%. And another 50% thinks no. Because in relation to what a person wants, if they want certain things, right, then what Bibi does is good. If I don't like that, in relation to that, Bibi is not good. Okay? That's how politics work. But how about someone being moral, ethically good? Is there an absolute good person, a bad person? Well, one of my teachers once, he asked me to translate, and he started his lesson with saying, the Buddha is bad, anger is good. So I asked him, what, can you repeat that? What? He said, say it, Buddha is bad, anger is good. Okay, I said it. Everyone was like, oh, shocked. And all Buddhists. And then he said, Buddha is bad because he harms suffering. Anger is good because it benefits suffering. And then I got it. So we say something is good when it benefits something that we want. Okay? So of course we don't want to suffer, but if hypothetically we love to suffer, we love to be miserable, depressed, we want everything to go wrong, you know, bring them on those traffic jams, stuck for 5 hours, yeah, right? If that was the case, we'd be really happy when the cause that would bring that suffering, we would call good. Is there an absolute good? No, it's in relation to what we want. So, love leads to happiness. When I have love, when I have a sincere wish for others to be happy, then I bring happiness to others, and that leads to a direct peace of mind, but also to future happiness. Versus if I give out suffering because of our interconnectedness, it makes me feel miserable, kind of disrupted or like non-peaceful in that moment. It takes away my peace of mind and it causes me problems in the future. And since I don't want that, I say negative actions are bad because they bring me the thing I don't want, which is suffering, which is, you know, anxiety, non-peace of mind. Is there an absolute good? No, it's just in relation to what I want. This is why Bibi can be good and bad at the same time. This is why this can be long and short at the same time. In relation to a broomstick, this is short. In relation to a matchstick, it's long. Right? Is it long in relation to nothing? Like if you don't say in relation to anything, is it long or short? It's neither. In relation to something other than itself, it is both long and short. No problem there, right? We all understand that. When it comes to long and short, maybe even hot and cold, right? What is hot? Well, there's always disagreement. When I teach a course, I always get really warm because I talk a lot. And I get so warm, and everyone's freezing, and I'm already dressed in my summer attire. This is my summer. This is what I wear in India. I left my winter thing in the next room because I know I'm going to get really warm, but you're probably going to get cold because you're just sitting there. So, what is this room? Warm or cold? In relation to me, it's warm. In relation to you, it's cold. So it's both. Therefore, everything that exists, everything that there is, exists not in and of itself as this, but only in relation to something else. It is then called this, that, and the other. I start off with this. We will get back to the mind. But this is an important idea. Think of yourself, who you are. Okay? Your sense of I. Not only do do you think I? You think I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm Israeli, I'm an artist, I'm a computer programmer, I'm a good driver, bad driver, you know, we have like a collage of ideas who we are. Thoughts, thinking, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. And we keep reinforcing that, right? But when you think, are you really, you're a woman, right, for instance, or a man. If you look among your mind and body, can you find that womanness or that manness? No. You call yourself a woman in relation to certain body parts. You say, I'm a woman. Or the way you feel, possibly, right? Even though you have a male body, but you feel like a woman. And since it's mind over body, you're a woman. Even though you may have a male body. Okay? So, therefore, it's in dependence on something other than yourself, your body or your mind, that you say you're a man or a woman. It is in relation to your passport and possibly a document in somewhere in the Israeli government, in the town hall or wherever, where it says you're Israeli. So in relation to that, you're Israeli. Okay? You're a father or a mother in relation to someone else, a kid. You're a son or daughter in relation to people, whether they're still alive or not. So it's always in relation to something other than the thing itself that you can say it's this, that, and the other. There's nothing you can find that makes you absolute a woman or absolute a man, absolute Israeli, absolute good or bad, nothing. But it doesn't feel that way. To your mind, it feels the opposite. It feels like there's something from the side of the object. It doesn't feel like you're just calling it that in relation to something else. To give you an example, an interesting example. Let's say Benny is going to be the new prime minister. Okay? Now you need to get used to saying Benny is the new. It takes a while. It's Bibi. No, it's not Bibi. It's not Bibi. It's Benny, right? So initially it takes a while, and then before long, you see Benny again and again. Suddenly Benny seems to be saying prime minister. You no longer need to kind of remind yourself, okay, Benny. So at some point Bibi is just X, and Benny is new one. And then let's say a few years from now, it's going to be Leora, the new prime minister. There's this lady called Leora. Okay, she's got fancy high backs, like Golden Meir. Didn't she have like, yeah, you know, whatever. So anyway, so then you see Benny and you go, oh, no, it's Leora. And you need some time to label, and before long, it seems like Leora has got written on her forehead, Prime Minister of Israel. See what the mind does? First you label, you designate, based, of course, on the fact she won the election, on the fact that she has a certain background. Of course, you don't just pick someone on the road and call them prime minister. That would be ridiculous. You need other factors. But based on that, we can say someone is the prime minister, and then it seems this person's got this some prime minister yut within her or him. Okay? This is where we're terribly mistaken. This is where we're in big trouble. In the sense that was, first of all, we believe it's all out there and I can't really change anything. Right? But things depend on my mind. It very much depends on my mind. And the one thing I can control, the one thing you can control is your own mind. Nothing else. Nothing else to the same degree. Can you change other people? Yeah, we try all the time, but do we really succeed? Right? We try, and a little bit we can influence them, but we can't really change them, unless they really want to change themselves. So it really depends on each individual person. Can we change politics? Is really going on? Try, possibly, but you know, still through the election coming up, so well, I'm not sure, but anyway, so can't really change that. So we may try to change a lot of things around us, but we can't. Can we change our body? Yeah, a little bit. Do some yoga, go jogging. But, you know, if things stuff happens that we don't want, sometimes we can change it, sometimes we cannot. Sometimes we cannot. So, what can we change? Our mind. That's the one thing. We can learn to control our own mind and get to know these thoughts, get to know that my sense of myself, right, is slightly distorted. Sometimes we suffer from low self-esteem. I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, right? It's actually just the mind thinking that. It doesn't make me bad or it doesn't make me anything. It's the first is the thought. And then usually I live like that. So actually, if you learn how to control these thoughts, you're controlling reality. Because from a Buddhist point of view, that is reality. What you perceive is your reality. What I perceive is my reality. And reality is just the summary of everyone's content in the mind. Is there something objectively out there? Well, if there is, show me. Even within science, now scientists have moved away from the idea that there's an objective reality. Initially, like 400 years ago, when science became developed to such a degree that we have very sophisticated modern science now, well, initially there was this idea, let's find objective reality. But how do you find an objective reality if the person measuring, the person weighing, if it's all done because of a mind? Who weighs? Who measures? Just because we both agree it's 10 centimeters long, it's still the mind measuring. It's still shapes and colors we perceive that allow us to measure. How do you measure? You see the measurement. So it's still totally subjective. How can there be an objective measuring? How do I know it's really like that, this length that I perceive? How do I know? Just because I got a ruler? Okay. So how do I know it's hot, it's cold? In relation to me, it's hot or cold? Or there's a reaction of something that is still subjective. I see something melt, but I see it with my senses. It's a subjective perception. And I'm wrong about the sun. I believe it rises, but it actually doesn't. So there are a lot of mistakes we make anyway. So how do I know there's something objective there? So even science is now considering the importance of mind, right? Because as I said, the shapes and colors we perceive, I mean, how much of the shapes and colors we don't perceive? A dog perceives 1,000,000 times more smells than we do. How reliable is my nose? Right? How reliable are my eyes? I don't see gamma rays, I don't see radio waves, I don't see, what else? Nuclear wave, radiation and stuff. I don't see those things. So I'm missing out on a lot. And in fact, whatever I see was there a split second earlier. I'm kind of a little bit behind, right? So the retina, something needs to appear to my eye, and then slowly I perceive actually what's already taking place around me. So I'm a little bit behind. And then the colors are not out there. Therefore the shapes are not the same. So I'm having a very subjective experience, but I believe I just see it as it is. Okay? So you see, reality actually from a Buddhist point of view is what happens in your own mind. And that's beautiful, because if I can change my own mind, I can actually be a happier person through changing my mind. Now I don't need to go into all the details. Alon can explain those to you. There are a lot more details. We don't have the time. But the fact is, it's very important to get to know your own mind. And that is the first step of Mahamudra. The first step is the conventional aspect of your own mind, which is your own mind, the mind itself. Get to know your own mind. Watch your own mind. That's what you do in meditation. Now, very difficult. Very difficult. It's not easy to do. Very difficult. Why? Because we're not used to watching the mind. What are we going to watch? Now, in this case, what we do first is, usually we learn about the mind. The mind is an experiencing entity
that always has an object. So, what does that mean, experiencing? It means that they usually give the two qualities. The mind is luminous, they say, like clear and luminous, and it apprehends something. Which means, in other words, if I ask you, close your eyes and think of breakfast, what happens? Something appears, right? Something appears to your mind. Why? Because either with your sense consciousnesses, things appear to you all the time, shapes and colors in the case of the eye consciousness, or sounds in case of the ear consciousness. The sound of my voice appears to you. Whether it exists really out there, we've already heard, it's pressure waves really, and who knows what a cockroach hears. Definitely not what you hear, probably not. But the point is still, something appears to your mind, to your sense consciousness. Now to your mental consciousness, you have images appearing, because you don't have direct access to the objects around you. Because your mental consciousness has no eyes, no eye sense power, no ear faculty whatsoever. You get either indirectly the information that was given to the eye consciousness is passed on, right? Either that, or you just make it up. You think about it, because right in front of you, your breakfast is not in front of you. So how can you think of your breakfast? The moment you think about it, it appears to your mind, right? As I'm talking, think of your breakfast. You can actually listen to me and think of your breakfast. You can all do that. So, it appears to your mind, because the mind is luminous in the sense it's like a mirror. A mirror is clear. Well, if it is clear, like a clean mirror, anything can appear to it as a reflection. So this is a similar quality that your mind has. It's like a mirror, anything can appear to it. I talk about Elat appears. I talk about the beach appears. Hummus, okay. Stinky socks, right. Right? All that can appear. Therefore, the mind is luminous. But not only can you can make anything appear. Sounds, right? If I sing some kind of song, what's it called? Something about Ima. There's a song Ima by the guy who passed away a few years ago. What's his name? Yeah, him. And he made this really beautiful song, Ima. Yeah, very good. Someone sings it, and now you can't get rid of it. It's going to be in your mind the whole evening. Like a song, or like yesterday, and you go all day, yesterday, you're driving home, yesterday, right? Like a broken record, you probably don't know all the words to it, so there's like a part. It goes around in your mind, like a song going around in your mind. In German, it's called an earworm. I think in English they now start using that word too. It's an earworm. Like a worm in your ear going round and round and round and round and round, right? Okay, like a broken record kind of thing. Okay, so that can appear. Anything can appear to your mind. And the mind is able to apprehend that. Not only does it appear, but the mind can actually apprehend that. It can know it can think about it can categorize it can judge it can be angry with it can be loving towards it can do anything. It has all these abilities. Okay? So that's your life, my life. Basically, we take things in through the senses, okay? And then the mental consciousness, it appears to the mental consciousness, we think about it, and if it was just one object, we'd be like a meditator. No, one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. That's our reality, okay? The movie that's playing in our mind, giving us the impression it's all happening out there, and we're just perceiving what's out there. No, it's totally subjective. Even science now knows that even our sense perception is influenced by our mental consciousness. That's why we see certain things and other people don't see them. There is already an idea of tree when you see a tree. Okay? So you don't have to pay too much attention to all the details. There's just tree. Okay? And, from a Buddhist point of view, all happiness listen, all our suffering comes from the mind. Right? Think about it. If I say, wow, this water is so delicious. I call this delicious water. Let's say it's something else, okay? It's hummus. It's really good hummus. Really good trina. A whole bottle full of best trina. So how do I come to think this is best trina? Really pleasant, really tasty. I taste it, and then in my mind there's a pleasant feeling. Ooh. Especially after I didn't eat for 2 days, right? I'm on a diet or whatever. And now I eat this. And I'm like, oh, this pleasure. Where's the pleasure? Where's the deliciousness? Here, with my mind. But now I project it. I call this delicious, right? I call this delicious. Like, oh, this is pleasurable. This is delicious. But the deliciousness was experienced here. Now, in relation to what I experienced with my mind, I say, this is delicious. Okay? And the next time I see it, it seems to be calling me, I'm delicious, buy me. Or when it comes to another person, you know, someone I'm infatuated with, they make me feel good. Feeling good is over here, right? This person doesn't enter me or anything. I talk to them, I see them, and in relation to that, I feel good. And that feeling of goodness, I say now, this person is pleasant. But the pleasantness was experienced here, and not over there. But now I believe it's inside this person. The pleasantness is inside the person. Now I want him or her, because my happiness comes from him or her. But actually it was my mind. It was my mind experiencing that happiness. It was never that this person kind of like I put him in my head or something, and the pleasure kind of came down my brain, and then I took him out again until the next time, right? No, it was always my mind that experienced the pleasure, but I mistakenly think, because I project the pleasure onto that person, I believe this person is giving me pleasure. Which is why it's so disappointing when they stop giving me pleasure. Oh, I was so in love with him, and now it's different. He changed. No. Your pleasure just wore off. Because that's what pleasure does. You know, trina. How much trina can I eat before this turns into suffering? This much, right? So anything I do, because my mind naturally gets bored, whatever I put into my mind, before sooner or later, because my mind needs something new, it'll turn into something unpleasant. Right? That's called dukkha, unsatisfactory. Because I'm looking for happiness outside of my mind, and these objects can't bring it to me. They give me a short sense of happiness, because I project that happiness onto them. But happiness can only come from within. That's good news. It's much cheaper than going to the movie theater and buying organic food, and you know, it's much cheaper. In fact, it's the one thing I can control. Because eating organic food, going to the movies, there's no guarantee I'll be happy. Therefore, it's so important to watch our own mind. Get to know this own mind. Get to know it. And initially, we may even find it scary. If there's stuff happening in the mind, like emotions, that they go back to my childhood possibly. So I don't want these emotions to arise. I may distract myself all the time to not think about these things. And I'm repressing it all the time. So if that's the case, it's going to be difficult. But I need to understand it is just a mind. Nothing scary, right? It's nothing scary. Just as a movie, however scary the image over there, the blood that's coming dripping, it's just a picture. There's no monster out there. So it's just in the nature of a projection. Same is true for our mind. The emotions we experience, they're not anything solid. They cannot hit us over the head. They're just emotions. They come and go, like waves in the ocean. They come out of the ocean, they go back into the ocean. And sometimes they're there, and sometimes they go. And usually pushing them away makes them come up. Accepting them, just watching them like emotions, not getting attached or getting drawn in, seeing it's just an emotion that comes and goes. It'll go on its own. So what you do in the meditation initially, you just watch your mental consciousness. Without judgment, you just watch it. Okay? From moment to moment, what is arising? And that is so hard only because we're not used to it. It's not hard. And we like to be entertained, right? I mean, if we just watch the clear nature of our mind, not getting sucked into the pictures, right, into the different content, that's what we usually do. If we're usually interested in the objects. If we see them in front of us, of course, we're very interested. We follow them, we watch a movie or listen to music, or just in our mind, thinking of what happened yesterday, right? We get sucked into the objects. But that's not what we want to do. We want to know the mind that does all that. What is it that creates my reality? I want to get to know this mind. And initially we get bored because we're used to a story, an excitement. Okay? So we get bored. We don't really know what to look at. This is what's so difficult. But at some point, and this is from the texts that we study in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the tradition that I follow is called the Gelug tradition. You have other traditions, Kagyu, Sakya, Nyingma. And in the Gelug tradition, there was a person called Losang Benchen, the fourth Benchen Lama, Losang Chudi Gyaltsen. Okay, never mind, it's just a name. Ask you to repeat it, I'll test you. Anyway, so he wrote a text about this, and what he wrote was his own experience. For us, it's just theory. For him, it was his own experience. And you read this text and you start meditating to turn this theory, which is initially theory, into praxis, as in like it becomes an experience for you. But that's what's hardest. Okay? To just watch the mind. That's all you do. Now, you can do it in the meditation cushion, on the meditation cushion, but usually people, there's a misunderstanding, I believe, of Buddhism. Two things are misunderstood. The idea of study in Buddhism and the idea of meditation in Buddhism. Both are misunderstood. Why? Because when we hear study, we think of ordinary study. So if I talk about you study the mind, you're thinking, oh, I'll study someone's mind, some mind out there, and I just gather the information, and I could take an exam and maybe be really good or not. I just gather information. But studying Buddhism doesn't mean that. It means you listen to what is told, what is taught, and then you internalize it. Okay? Someone talks about the mind, and right away you try to recognize the mind within your own mind. Someone talks about anger. Try to recognize anger within you. So recognize what they just talked about, right? Like a surgeon. When you're a surgeon, first you're told this is what a heart looks like. And they show you like a plastic heart that you can remove valves from, you know, you can take this off and that off, right? And look inside. Is that an actual heart? No, it's just a theory. So this is what you need to look for. Until they allow you for the first time, cut someone up. Look inside, right? Ah, oh. So you're now going back to, okay, where's this valve? Where's that valve? Where's the, I don't know how your heart surgeon, any heart surgeon, I don't know any words here. Blood vessel, tissue, okay. So there's this, the right side, the left side, the internal. And you now, what you learned in theory, you now recognize based on an actual heart. Now, with hearts it's easier, it doesn't have to be your own, it better not be your own when you're doing this, right? It better be someone else's heart. With the mind it's the other way around. It cannot be anyone else's mind, it can only be your own. It doesn't help to think, oh, I know what anger is. My neighbor is so angry, he's got a problem, right? And I recognize my neighbor's anger, and I never look at my own. It doesn't help me. Because the only anger I can really get to know is my own. So Buddhist study is all about learning something, and then if I can, as soon as I can, I mean it may take a while, because initially it's hard to understand, but then to check, to internalize it.
So right away take it deeper. That's the first thing that's misunderstood. So study should just not be just gathering information, but gathering the information and then internalizing it. The second misunderstanding is meditation. That meditation can only be in a really nice and quiet place. Everyone has to shut up, I want to meditate. No, I'm kidding. It's not like that necessarily, but I want it in a certain place, you know, and it has to be like this incense, can't be that, special meditation cushion, you know, cotton's better, or something. You know, like we have all these ideas. We're so busy getting ready for the meditation, sometimes we don't have the time to meditate because we're, okay. Now that is just the external. Of course I'm exaggerating. It's good to find a quiet place to do it for the first time, and to sit comfortably. But what we call meditation, the way you sit, everything, that's just the external position. What is meditating? The body is not meditating. The body is just in a most conducive position. What is meditating is the mental consciousness. Not the sense consciousness, the mental consciousness. And do you have to sit on a meditation cushion? No. Ideally, all day long, you, in the case of Mahamudra, again and again, you watch your own mind. Okay? Now, in the initial stages, and I'm going more into the advanced stages, is really mindfulness of the mind. It's a different word, mindfulness of the mind. Becoming aware of what's happening, looking for the clarity of the mind, looking for the apprehension, the experience, not the object. Don't get sucked into the object, because otherwise it'd be like everyday kind of situation, because we always get sucked in the object. But without focusing on the content, the object, we focus on the projector itself. Getting to know the light and not getting to know the movie that's passing by. Okay? So that is the first stage, to just watch. And you can do it when there's a traffic jam, you can do it when you're with other people, right? I mean, you have to go back and forth, you can't do it all the time. I mean, don't focus only on that, you know, you're going to have a crash in the car if you just, so you don't pay attention to the road any longer. But we're good at multitasking, okay? I mean, I can talk to you, you can be listening to me and making dinner plans. I can do that even while talking to you. We can multitask, we can go back and forth. So therefore, we should bring our meditation initially, yes, the best time is when we just focus on doing that, but we should take it from our meditation cushion into our daily life. Because meditation is just a tool. What is the purpose of it? To transform our mind in a positive way. And trust me, I've met meditators who meditated for years and years, but they didn't transform their mind. Right? Yes, they meditated. Well, actually, they didn't meditate by definition. They were in a retreat, in a meditative setting. But they didn't come out more peaceful, more satisfied, more loving. So, in fact, they maybe meditated on their anger, and their anger is stronger. Or their arrogance. Look at me, I'm meditating. I hope everyone can see me. My window's open. Right? I mean, I don't think this is an issue here, but the stuff that happens, you know, like when you're a Buddhist, and you label, and you now, you know, oh my God, this person's so famous because they're meditating. It's all, you know, you bring a whole balagan into Buddhism. Right? Okay. So therefore, it's about transforming the mind and getting to know our mind all day long. That's the first level of Mahamudra. Just getting to know the conventional mind, our mental consciousness. Now, that is not enough though. That's just the conventional. And now it gets difficult. Just as the objects around me don't exist in and of themselves, even the mind itself is totally relative. And that's hard. Because that seems like pulling away the carpet underneath your feet. You can kind of accept, all right, reality as I see it, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist as objectively over there. But thank you very much, at least it's subjectively there. Right? And it seems the mind is just a little bit more real than everything else.
With the movie projector, I can get the imagery over there, that's not as real, but there's something, as a movie projector, I can throw it against the wall and there'll be a hole. So it's real solid, it's substantial. Versus the movie, okay, it's not. We get that. But, unfortunately, that's just an analogy, it's just an example. And actually, the movie projector is just as unreal, if you like, than everything else. The mind also doesn't exist as solidly, as independently as it seems. And that's hard to understand. Because we don't really understand the mind in the first place. So leave alone the fact that it doesn't exist as inherently, as intrinsically as it seems. Now again, I'm going back to inherent. I used the word inherent. Previously, I used a different word. I said independently or objectively. Okay, so that is easy when we talk about objects outside of our mind. They don't exist objectively. But I seem to suggest now they exist here. So it's not enough to say they don't exist objectively. I may want to add the word independently. Okay, so the mind doesn't exist independently. That's another word I can use to describe it. But I need to say more. It is not naturally a mind in and of itself. What does that mean? How bizarre. I'll give you an analogy that works quite nicely. Naturally or inherently, if I asked you, is water naturally warm? Is water naturally hot? It's not naturally, isn't it? It can be hot, but you need something else to make it hot. Which is why we say water is not naturally hot. Would you agree with me? You need a stove to warm it up. Is it naturally cold? No, it's not. Is water naturally wet? Yes. You don't need anything. You don't need a stove to make it wet. You don't need to ask a plumber to make it wet, right? It just is wet. So it seems within it, there's this wetness. No. Water is also not naturally wet because it depends on other things, on things other than itself to be wet. It depends on us perceiving it as wet. Is fire naturally hot? Well, only if in relation to how I experience it, it was hot. If there were some living being that would be really cold near it, then in relation to that person, it would be cold. And of course it burns things. We say it burns things, but it makes them disappear. Whether this thing feels hot? No, the paper doesn't feel hot. It feels hot to me, but the paper doesn't experience heat. It doesn't feel hot. It's in relation to me that I say it's hot. It's in relation to me that I experience it wet. Water as wet. So in the end, it's again in relation to something other than itself that we say it's hot. It's in relation to atoms that are not the water. It's in relation to particles that are not the fire. So it's actually not inherently that, because inherently would mean it doesn't depend on anything else to be that. And of course that's ridiculous. It needs oxygen, fire for instance, to be hot, etc., etc. Now, this is a difficult idea. Don't think you grasp it right away. We studied this for 17, 20, 25 years. This is, when we hear it, okay, but now you need to bring it into your everyday life and look around and understand that. That's difficult. But it's a question, it's only 2 hours. So, I share with you whatever ideas I have, and you may pursue it from there. Anyway, but having said all this, now what about the mind itself? Also the mind only exists relatively. It's not in and of itself anything. It's always in relation to something else that it is this, that, and the other. To give you an example, I choose one particular mind. One particular one. And let's analyze that particular mind. anger. I choose this mind because we all know when we're angry. We don't know so much when we're arrogant. We don't know always when we're attached. But anger, we're all aware of. Would you agree? We're all aware. Oh, I was really furious yesterday. I'm still angry. Okay? So if I'm still angry, if the mind is in and of itself, what is anger in the first place? Well, I think you would all agree, anger is a type of mind that focuses on some person usually, or sometimes a situation maybe, but most of the time it's a person. Okay, someone at work, BB, my partner, right? We get a lot angrier with our partners than we get with the bus driver. Right? Much more frequently, people that are close to us, my parents, my children, so someone, and in that moment, when we're angry, to that mind, the object of anger seems 100% bad. It's like an exaggerated version of that person. Only to that mind. It exaggerates the negativity of that person. You see them as just totally bad. Not with a different mind when you're not angry, that's different. But in that moment of anger, in that moment, if you think, oh, they just saved my life, you can't really be effectively angry, can you? Right? They give you, you see them as really negative, and a moment later they give you 1,000,000 shekel. How angry you're going to be. Right? They've done something good to you, or they helped your children, or your whatever. And then it's very difficult to be angry with them, because to be angry, this person needs to be 100% negative. And in fact, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when he talks about anger, he always cites a very famous, what is he? Cognitive scientist? I think it is late 80s, maybe 90s now. He's American, his name is Aaron Beck. A-A-R-O-N, right? Aaron Beck. And he says 90% of what our anger perceives is a projection. Aaron Beck. He had a dialogue with the Dalai Lama. The Lama regularly meets with scientists, and so that somehow stuck. For years he quotes Aaron Beck, right? So Aaron Beck, you can actually Google him. I did the other day. He's still alive. Quite elderly now, but he said, yes, 90% of what our anger, he's worked with people who experienced a lot of anger and got to know through his conversation with them, got to know how anger works, and he says 90% of what our anger perceives is a projection. Okay? This is why when we get angry, we get mad. Mad in us, we do crazy things when we're angry, right? We may actually hit someone out of anger, someone we'd never hit. We act in an exaggerated way because the mind that is angry exaggerates the negativity of the other person. Okay? And we no longer can separate the action of the person from the person. We're not angry with the action, we're angry with the person. Although the person and the action are not the same. But it's so strong that the whole person gets seen as just negative. Only in that moment when we're angry. Okay? So, and attachment is the other way around. It sees it as totally beautiful. Oh, perfect. Smell, sight, everything is perfect. Right? We very conveniently ignore any negative qualities. They may just they may just intellectually be there, but emotionally it feels like, oh, this person is perfect. All my happiness is with that person. I'm using here exaggerated versions of anger and attachment for the sake of recognition. That sound familiar?
Yeah.
We all have those, right? We have attachment, we have anger, but anger is stronger because the physical response is stronger. We're just more aware of it. Okay, so let's take anger. Anger. So what is anger? What does it mean? It is an agent, in a sense it's an experiencer that has an object and it does something with it. Okay? It experiences that. It sees this person as totally negative, it exaggerates the negativity and wants to be away from it. Maybe harm that object. Maybe kick it in the butt or whatever. Right? Okay. So, that's anger. Now, is it truly, inherently, is there something within it that makes it anger? No. Anger is just something, we call something anger in relation to many different aspects. First of all, there needs to be an unpleasant feeling. It needs to arise from an unpleasant feeling. It depends on an unpleasant feeling. If you feel happy and blissful, you can't be angry. Something has to annoy you, something has to bother you, something has to make you feel uncomfortable, whatever. Right? There has to be an unpleasant feeling initially. Without that, you can't get angry. You can't get attached without a feeling of pleasure. Something has to trigger pleasure in you. So, it cannot be intrinsically anger, it cannot be within it have that anger, because it depends on something other than itself, an object. It depends on that pleasant feeling, and then a mind that exaggerates that pleasant feeling. Because before you feel, in the case of anger, it's unpleasant. So an unpleasant feeling, and then there's another mind that exaggerates that negativity, and a moment later you become angry. So it's not naturally, like we think of naturally anger, because it depends on so many other things to be angry. And then it depends on an object again. We don't just get angry without a reason. It depends on possibly something to do what we perceive with our senses. Someone says something, someone did something, whether yesterday or whenever. But our senses perceived some situation, words, sight, whatever. And those again, they don't exist out there and intrinsically, naturally. They're just again a creation by the mind. Then that gives rise to an unpleasant feeling. Okay? And then that unpleasant feeling is exaggerated, it becomes worse. The person, we identify this unpleasant feeling with the person, and then we get angry with the person. See, there are all these stages, and there are moments of this mind. Each moment, like very small moments that are all coming together, moments in time, right? It's like moments in time. It's a continuation of moments. It's not like you're angry for a split second. No one can be angry for a split second. You need some time for the anger to be there, so a few moments. And none of those moments is the anger itself, it's the continuum. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay? Like a note is never a whole song. It's only a sub-moment of a song. A song needs to have a continuum. Likewise, anger needs to be a continuum. So it's made up of moments that are not anger. It depends on so many things. So in and of itself, independently, it cannot be anger. Therefore, this anger has an ultimate level to it, an ultimate truth, a final truth, which is the underlying fact that it doesn't exist independently in and of itself, although it feels that way. That, when you focus on that, then you have Mahamudra that focuses on the fact that, in this case is the anger, doesn't exist in and of itself. That is the next level. So when you meditate, you first focus on the conventional level of the mind. Okay, the conventional, which means, let's take the anger. Just experience, get to know the anger. Don't get sucked into the object, because otherwise your mind that is observing the anger becomes anger itself. No, you want anger here and then observe it. There are two ways in which you can observe it. Either it was there a split second earlier, or a second mind arising, perceiving the anger. Okay? But usually that's very difficult, because when you start watching the anger, it disappears. Because all your attention is with a meditative mind. So oftentimes you just go back a split second earlier, because it's still clear in your mind, and you, through your memory, you observe the anger that was there just a moment earlier. Okay? Or you go back and forth so that you can hold on to the object. And of course, anger is extreme. You can take other minds. Just watch your mind at all times, and if it's not anger, it's a different mind. But then, you also, having analyzed the mind's ultimate nature, you focus on the lack of intrinsic independent existence of each mind. That's the emptiness of each mind. So that's difficult. That's really difficult, because we don't understand necessarily what's this emptiness, this lack of intrinsic independent existence that I described. We don't really know what that means. In fact, we start off with The table doesn't exist intrinsically, inherently. Water doesn't exist intrinsically, inherently. We start off with these objects. The mind is much harder. So you can see, practically, it's difficult. Great. So that is the sutric level. So basically, the instructions are pretty straightforward. We'll have questions in a moment. The instructions are not like, you don't have to say that much. First, learn about the mind, get to know the mind, do it, watch the mind. For that, you don't need to learn that much. You learn a little bit, you watch it. You learn a little bit, and as you watch your mind and you add more information, you become better and better and better at it. You just need to do it. And that's difficult because we like to be entertained, and now we need to entertain ourselves. But honestly, it's great fun to watch your own mind. The balagan in our own mind, it's funny. It's funny. Humor is good. Humor is good. Don't go like, oh, I don't want to be angry, I'm so bad. No. No, just look at it with humor. It's a crazy story. It's much faster than any fast movie now. It's fun, how I get from one idea to the next and all this stuff. So don't get sucked into it. It's not you, it's the mind. Right? I mean, we are a person, we are made of many different minds and bodies, so it's a particular mind in that moment. That's not me, I still say my mind. So we don't need to get sucked into it. Okay? So to just watch it without judging it and getting to know the mind. That is the first stage. It's relatively easy in comparison to what's to come. Watch the lack of inherent existence of your own mind. Right? It doesn't exist in and of itself as an experiencer. It's dependent on this, that, and the other. It's only relative to this and that I call it a mind. It doesn't have mind written on it. It's because I label it as such. That's why it's a mind. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. No, it exists very much. It exists as a conventional object. And that is watching your own mind. But that's still the sutric system. Because what you're watching is your course mind, the course mind, that everyday life, like when you're awake, there's a course kind of mind. That's the mind you're watching. Okay? That's it. That's it. I mean, it's so hard to do, but that's actually it. So to not see the mind as separate from its object, but rather see the lack of inherent existence of that whole entity. That's the sutric aspect, and then there's the tantric aspect. Whoa, it gets harder. But interesting. Because now the emptiness of the mind, still the object, but the mind changes. Because in Tantra is a meditation technique, basically. It has a philosophy, but it's very similar to the sutric philosophy, with one exception. That in Tantra, there's a whole description of mind, but it doesn't talk just of the normal mind when we're awake. It talks about subtler level of mind that pop up every now and then, but that we're often not aware of. What you would maybe call the subconscious mind. And it has techniques to make that subconscious, or that subtle mind, come up at will. So right now, we are only aware of the time when we're awake. Think about it. I mean, how many hours do you sleep at night? 6, 7, 8? Comatose. We just lie there, right? No recollection. We wake up in the morning, the last thing we remember is what we did before we went to sleep. If at all we remember that. But usually we do, if you pay some attention. Maybe some dreams. But even without dreams, you only remember your dreams if right after you're waking up, you think about it with a coarser mind. I know just the other day I had this funny dream, a really funny dream. My friend, I was still in India, and I woke up and I thought, oh, that's such a funny dream. I need to tell my friend about this funny dream. And then I forgot to think about it. And then in the morning, I was like, I had a really funny dream. And she was like, what was it? I don't remember. Because I hadn't used the coarser mind to think about it when it was still fresh. And all I remembered was that it was funny. Okay, never mind, it wasn't important. But the point is that in order to connect even without dreams, which we can remember, it's hard unless we use the coarser mind right afterwards to think about them, otherwise it's gone. Now, actually, even when we're asleep, there's a mind the whole time. There's a mind, there's mental consciousness the whole time. So when we say we're unconscious, it doesn't mean that there's no consciousness, it means there's no sense consciousness. Sense consciousness is not there. Mental consciousness is there. Even if its object is just darkness, if it's just nothingness, right? Then of course, how much can you have a recollection of nothingness? Nothingness, 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 nothingness. Oh, 8 hours of nothingness. No, it's all blended into one. It just feels like darkness. And then you have a dream every now and then, right? And you go back into the deep sleep, but the mind has an object, except it doesn't switch from one to the next. And since it is so much subtler, then our mind, while we're awake, those two don't connect. When you lie unconscious, same thing. There's a very subtle mind in that moment. The coarse mind is not there. And when does that happen? When we die. Same thing happens. Falling asleep and dying are very similar. The only difference is you wake up with a different body when you die. From a Buddhist point of view, the mind becomes coarser again, but this time you've left this form and you're in a different form. Because mind cannot be destroyed, just as something physical cannot be destroyed. Something physical can transform into something different, but it can never just pop out of existence without any residue. Okay? So before the Big Bang, there must have been something physical. And even when this world is gone, something physical will continue. But mind is non-physical. And something non-physical continues also on. This accounts for, this is why there's life after death. Okay? And actually, from a Buddhist point of view, death is relative. It's the end of one thing and the beginning of something new. I said, everything is relative. Each moment is the death of one situation and the birth of something new. Depends on how you look at it. Right? Would you agree? Mm-hmm. Each moment is the end of one thing and the beginning of something new. It's always relative. Except with death, we're just focusing on the end. Even birth is the end of something else. Well, freedom for the parents, that's for sure. No, I'm kidding. But the fact is, like, you know, for the child, it's also the end of the life of the womb and the beginning of something new. Every moment is like that. But the consciousness goes on. Consciousness continues on. And what's so fascinating is that consciousness can be coarser and subtler. And the subtle mind is very powerful. Very powerful. In fact, even when you're awake, when you meditate, the more focused you are, the subtler your mind is, and the more powerful your mind is, the more peaceful your mind is. Okay? When you're like all stressed out and you go here or there, the mind becomes very coarse and more likely to be unhappy. When you're calm, your mind grows a little subtler, and there's peace. Okay? And when it grows even subtler, then your death experience can actually be very peaceful and very happy. You know, people who had near-death experiences, they talk about a white light. This is just the nature of the subtle mind. It's very bright. It's got this, it gives you a sense of brightness and great peace. And some people have the fortune to come back from that. But there you experience your subtlest mind. The subtle mind of clear light. The subtle mind of death. And people who come back from that, they say, oh, it was so peaceful. There's a documentary by the BBC, The Human Body, and it talks about all the different stages in your life. Each chapter deals with first it's birth, then it's young toddler age, then young person, you know, teenager, and the last chapter is death. Great chapter. And it follows a person who's dying, and it interviews people who had a near-death experience. They all talk about the white light, and they talk about this one guy, I remember him, he says like, oh, there was a sense of peace and love and wisdom. That subtle mind is the real nature of our own mind. This is what we can actually experience, but right now, we cannot hold it. So there are techniques that when you're ready, you can make this mind come up even during the day. And that's the most powerful mind to meditate on. And in fact, there are meditators, and this I can say, I've seen it myself in my own eyes, that from a Buddhist point of view, death is not the end of your existence. It's just like falling asleep. Our life is like one day in relation to, if you could see it as like one day is similar to a death, like one whole day would be like a life, and in the evening we go to sleep and we wake up. And in fact, our body's actually different throughout the night. It actually did change, but it doesn't look totally different. So our life is like that. We live one life, we go to bed, we wake up, and we wake up with a new body. Okay? So, therefore, for a meditator, a practitioner, death is a great opportunity. You're not scared of death. Nothing scared about it. Are you scared about going to sleep? No. Wake up the next morning. And the good thing is they're meditators and they know about their own mind through the practice of מהאמודרה, for instance, and they know how to work with their mind so that their experiences are positive or happy experiences by generating love, compassion, living an ethical life, right? Which gives happiness to the mind. The more ethical, the less you harm others and yourself, the happier and the more content you are. Okay? Peace and acceptance with regard to yourself, and you have to start with yourself, and then of course it's easier to be peaceful and patient with others. So you learn these qualities, which are just internal qualities. The mind is calmer, more peaceful, and what are you worried about? Right? When you die, very peacefully, no regret. Okay? They die, but what more they do, they have learned through meditation to hold this clear light mind when they die. It's only there for us, it's only a short period, 3 days at the most, for ordinary people. You can be in that state for 3 days. There's a subtle mind still in your body, and you're not actually dead, from a Buddhist point of view. Your mind hasn't left your body yet, for 3 days. Which is why, very interesting, in a lot of cultures, you leave the body for 3 days. Wonder why, right? In a lot of cultures. So, someone must have picked up on that there's still something there, and you're in this blissful state, okay? But a meditator can extend that. They can extend that, and while you do this, you cannot decay. Now, one of my teachers, he died, and he was a great meditator. And when he died in a Tibetan hospital where I live, and we had to go there to do prayers. But it wasn't scary, because he was in meditation. But his heart had stopped beating. There was no blood pressure. They had tested. I mean, they're not like you're going to say, oh, he's dead, let's just accept that. No, there were doctors testing him. No heartbeat, cold body. But there was a little bit of warmth left at his heart, in the center of his chest. Not the organ heart, but the center of his chest, where we usually point at when we say I. Right? There's an area where the subtle mind now, with a very subtle energy, manifests. This was summer in North India, which means 90% humidity, monsoon. The temperature was between 30 and 36 degrees, and he had been dead for 5 days. Trust me, the smell of someone who decays, unbearable. We were in that room for many hours to do the prayers. I was there. This person was dead. You cannot hold your breath for that long. No one can. He was like, pretend I'm dead, right? You can't pretend you're dead. I mean, come on, he was dead. The man was dead, right? So he was sitting there in a meditative position, and he was dead. And he was there for days, right? And so now there are scientists who do this research. They've been doing this. They have machines now to, you can read online about the research results. What I'm trying to say is, it's not about what happened outside. It's the subtle mind that manifested in that person, and they meditate with that. 2 weeks. I think 3 weeks is the longest I've heard of. Okay? And they just stay, because this very subtle mind is very powerful. It's very blissful and very focused. So you take this very subtle mind and you focus on emptiness. And how do you get to this very subtle mind? These are tantric techniques. So either you wait until death and hold the mind, but even throughout their waking life, they can make this mind come up through meditational techniques. The last time they can do it in this body is at the time of death. And so they make this come up and focus on the emptiness of that mind. That is tantric Mahamudra. I mean, you can tell how difficult that is. It's really difficult. But it's like anything. It's a technique, right? Through habituation, you do it over and over again, and at some point you can do it. It's just difficult. And that mind is so powerful because it cuts through our anger, it cuts through our attachment, it cuts through a lot of our exaggerated emotions that give us such a hard time. Why? Because it cuts through our basic misperception of reality, which is an exaggeration of what is there. Our mind exaggerates. It comes up with this world, it doesn't deny the existence of something, it adds more of a substantial, real, independent existence that things actually have. So because you exaggerate how phenomena exist, it's an exaggerated emotion that is arises as a response of that. To give you an example, remorse, regret, it's a good emotion. I regret what I've done, it was wrong. But out of a sense, I am really there, and I was really wrong, and I'm so horrible, your remorse turns into guilt. Guilt is exaggerated. Guilt holds on to like, oh, what I did last year, I messed up my children, I did this, made this wrong. And I keep carrying on like it's something solid, unchanging, impermanent there. Permanent there. That's an exaggeration. It's long gone. The mistake is gone. I'm a new person, new mind, new body. Mind has changed, body has changed. And all I'm doing is holding on to it. It's not in accordance with reality. And then I have this exaggerated response. Right? It's all an exaggeration. So everything we do, and all our problems is that we always add more to things than they actually are. And our emotions, that's our main problem. They're exaggerated. So love is an emotion that is positive, that's healthy. I wish for someone to be happy. What is the exaggerated version? I want them to make me happy. Can't live without them. Right? A feeling of closeness that instead of wishing the other person to be happy, now expects that person to make me happy. And I have my moments of love when I want them to be happy, but I have my moments of like, don't leave me, I can't live without you. And then I try to control the situation, and oh my God, it ends up in divorce. The worse it gets, the more the other person feels suffocated, and eventually they move away. Right? My children, the more I like to hold on to them, the more they move the other direction. Okay? Because it's exaggerated. Can't bear it. So it leads to a lot of suffering. That's just a misperception. It's our misperception. There's nothing, we're not evil people. We just don't know how things really exist. So we think we bring ourselves happiness. We want to be happy, and we deserve to be happy. Everyone deserves to be happy. But unfortunately, we look in the wrong place. We have these strong emotions that we are unable to let go of. Why? Because we don't understand how things really are. And this is what Mahamudra helps us to do. Through understanding the coarser level of mind and its actual nature, that's the sutric aspect, but taking it even further, understanding even the subtle nature of our subtle mind and its nature. And that's the way to really make changes to these deep emotions that sometimes we're not even aware of. That's Mahamudra. But very difficult to do. It's relatively easy. I mean, look, an hour and a half, and I went through the sutric and the tantric aspect. And of course, there's so much more to it. I just want to take the time to also take some questions. And there's going to be a great Lama who's coming, very, very highly advanced Lama. He is one of those Lamas who can do those meditations. It's amazing. His name is Yadidi, and he's actually coming to Israel in January. He's going to teach a whole course on what we talk about today. So there's the opportunity to meditate on it and learn much more about it.